Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:32. Nice to see everyone. And now that oh, great. Hi, Sandy. Welcome. Lynn suggested it might be nice to do some introductions because I don't actually think we formally met a number of you. So we'll just go around. And I'll start. I'm Mary Niles on the NMV board and the SU boards.
Which way to go?
We'll go around that way. Sure.
Rhoda McClure, the principal at Bakersfield Elementary Middle School.
Lynn Coda, superintendent.
Miranda Johnson, Sheldon.
Emily Norris, Sheldon.
John Judgix, Berkshire.
Ethan Destel, third grade teacher here at Sheldon.
I'm Julie Benet. I'm one of your acting principals here in Sheldon. I'm Lisa DeWarn, the other acting principal in Sheldon.
Sandy Alexander, Montgomery principal. Nice to meet you.
Courtney Fletcher, administrative assistant.
Morgan Dale, business manager.
Leonard Bordeaux, principal at Berkshire Elementary.
Great. Well, it's nice to have you all at the meeting. So on our consent agenda, we have a couple of prior minutes from the May 3rd meeting and then our May 8th special meeting. Additionally, we have a few policy reads. Any discussion about minutes or policy, questions, concerns?
Can I say something about policy?
Absolutely.
So you'll notice in, it's listed a little differently than normal. Under policy, there are two policies that say legislative mandates, first read. So this is coming out of order. We would typically bring all new policies through our policy committee. But at the end of the legislative session, Act 24, I believe, Morgan, I don't know if you remember, passed, and that was around school safety measures. And two of the elements of that bill were these mandatory policies now for all schools in Vermont. So fire and emergency preparedness drills and access control and visitor management. When this law went into effect, it said that schools needed to have these policies in place by August 1st. In reality, it isn't possible for most schools to be able to have these policies in place by then because of the timeline, and you're going into summer and you don't have enough board meetings between now and then to get there. But we are going to get these through both boards for the first read approval this month. So I just wanted to say that. That's why it's written that way, and that's why we're doing this out of order.
Thanks, Lynn. Any discussion from the board? No? Okay, so I'll make the motion to accept the consent agenda, and we'll do that by roll since we have Kat virtually. Kat? You're muted. Kat, do you hear us here?
She's trying to speak, it's just not coming through here.
Okay. Miranda?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Mary's an aye, but we do need Kat because we don't have a quorum otherwise.
There you go, here we go.
Okay, perfect. That gets the job done. Any need to reprioritize the flow of the meeting?
I don't believe so.
Okay, great. All right, so that brings us to our public comment, recognition of visitors. Yep, absolutely, please.
Hi, Jared Valencourt from Berkshire. I just want to start off by saying that parents do not send their children to school to have conversations about or to participate in groups that are based on sexual identity or sexual preferences. That's just not why parents send children to school. This is supported by surveys reflecting that the majority of respondents oppose instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity in elementary school and oppose schools counseling students on their gender identity without parental consent. So why am I telling you this? During the week of March 13th, children at Berkshire Elementary School were presented with information about the formation of a GSA club. GSA stands for Gay Straight Alliance. It's also called Gender Sexualities Alliance at the high school. It was reported that the presenter told children that they would take it slowly, and even the parents haven't been notified because it's a very sensitive topic. I'll say that again. Even the parents haven't been notified because it's a very sensitive topic. This news was very upsetting, so we reached out to the principal for clarification on 4 separate occasions. Once notifying our board representatives, twice notifying the superintendent before the principal finally responded. In response, the statements were not refuted. The principal explained that, as this is in the exploratory phase, the presenter wanted to assure students that the planning would be slow and deliberate, to build a sense of comfort for the students in this club, and create a thoughtful plan for this club. Regarding parental notification, the principal explained that we do not directly communicate with parents every time we start a club. These actions and the apparent disregard and disrespect for parental concerns sow the seeds of mistrust between today's education system and the community. Children are struggling to meet basic reading and math proficiencies. There are unprecedented reports of behavioral issues, and this is what today's education system chooses to spend resources on and promote, while also keeping parents uninformed about sensitive topics that they want to introduce. I'll say this again. This is not why parents send children to school. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so this brings us to our school spotlight with Julie and Lisa.
And Ethan.
Oh, and Ethan, sorry. It's not on the agenda.
Look at that. Okay. Go, Courtney.
All right, I think I'm going to start. So Sheldon Elementary School, I really thank you first for allowing us to share our shared leadership model that we've developed and implemented throughout this year. So we really appreciate this time. I thought I would start with giving a little history about how this kind of unfolded. So in October, I was the mentor of the existing principal at the time, and I asked her if I could have a little staff meeting time, because the more we worked together, the more I saw the enormity of the task in front of us. There was a lot of work to be done, not because of existing administration, but because we were just trying to bounce back from the pandemic. So we were like, there's a lot to be done, and one person is just not going to be able to fill this big job. So I thought that I address this video with the staff. So I thought we'd take like 5 minutes. And this video is Liz Wiseman, and she's the author of a book called Impact Players. And it was written post-COVID. So it was like fresh. I think that it'll show you that it set the tone for all the work that we're going to be that we did this year.
Why isn't the sound working? Sorry, I don't know what's going on with the sound.
The TV itself has volume button, but is the TV volume on here? Yeah, looks like it.
We may or may not be able to show the video.
I know.
Give it a couple.
Take a brief intermission while we're trying to figure out the sound. While Courtney is looking for speakers, I want to express my appreciation for both Lisa and Julie. This has been a really challenging year. The transitions at Sheldon have been challenging, and to have the opportunity to have two just really experienced administrators to come in and help steady the ship here in Sheldon. I think that, certainly I have felt the impact of your presence here. I think that I can speak for the staff, that the appreciation for your impact and the students has just been tremendous. So thank you deeply for your work here in Sheldon this year.
Thank you.
And for coming out of retirement to do this. We appreciate it.
There was user error, not system error.
I think the presentation can survive if we can't get it working.
A topic we're hearing a lot about, and honestly, it's a topic that I'm tired of hearing about, and that is, we're all tired. And I want to start with this idea of burnout and exhaustion and this great resignation that people feel exhausted, they're burnt out, people are resigning from their jobs in droves, or they've been let go of their jobs in droves, or worse, people are resigning to just go through the motions of their job, to turn a crank, and they feel like they're spinning and they're stuck. And it's easy for the world to assume that burnout is a result of too much work, too few resources, and to assume it's this casualty of the pandemic. But everything I've learned studying the best leaders, as well as everything I've learned about studying people I call impact players, is that burnout more often than not is a result not of too much work, but of too little impact. We went into 9 companies, all top employers with global presence, and we interviewed 170 managers. And we asked each of those managers to identify 2 people that they had led in the past, either people who work from there currently or in the past. Now, both were people who we asked that they identify someone who was smart, who was capable, and who's hardworking. One of whom was having an extraordinary impact, delivering work of enormous value to the team and to the organization. And of course, we came to call these people impact players. We also asked them to identify someone equally smart, capable, and hardworking who was doing a fine job, who was doing well. And then we contrasted these two, really trying to understand, what do they do? How do they think? What kind of effect do they have on the team? Now, there's a couple things that, and I call these contributors. Sometimes I'll refer to them as ordinary contributors or typical contributors. The important point is this was not a comparison of top performers and bottom performers. It was looking at the difference between people who were doing a solid job versus people who are making an extraordinary, above and beyond kind of impact. But I was even more struck by how these managers describe these ordinary contributors. Because here's what they said about them. They said things like, they did their job well. They were brilliant at their job. They followed direction. They took ownership and responsibility for initiatives. They were focused, and they carried their weight on teams. And as I stepped back and I looked at this profile in aggregate, I was struck by perhaps what you might be struck by. It's like, isn't this really the description of the ideal team player? Like, don't you want people on your team that do their job and follow direction and take ownership and are focused and do their part and carry their weight? And here's what I began to see, is that these ordinary contributors were absolutely stellar in ordinary times. But in times of ambiguity and uncertainty, when there's a lot of chaos, when things are changing, when things start to feel like they're out of your control, these ordinary contributors fell short. And this way of working falls short. And these are the situations where the impact players distinguish themselves, the situations that they handle fundamentally differently. There were 5 of these in particular. The first was what I call messy problems, where there's a business opportunity comes in or a problem arises, and it's not this department's job or that department's job. It's not his job. It's not your job. It's nobody's job, but yet it's important, so it's everybody's job. The second was unclear roles, when you're clearly collaborating and people are working together, but it's unclear who's in charge, who's leading this initiative, who's the project leader, who's just the boss of this particular meeting when there's a leadership vacuum. Unforeseen obstacles. I feel like we've all earned advanced degrees in unforeseen obstacles over the last 2 years. We all know what this is like when something unprecedented, out of your control, that you could not have planned for or predicted just drops in your path, uninvited and unwelcomed, unannounced. The next is moving targets, where the market is changing, the situation is changing, the needs are changing. When you're shooting at a goal, but the goal box is moving while you're shooting at it. And lastly, unrelenting demands, where the workload is increasing faster than the resources are increasing, when the workload feels like it's just more than you can humanly accomplish. When I looked at these situations, I was struck by how they weren't major crises. These were kind of little moments, but it was in these little moments that the impact players distinguished themselves. And it was because of the way they handled these little moments that they were trusted in the big moments and entrusted with the most important work of the organization. It was very similar to what I found when I was doing the multipliers research. Is there were a few of these iconic multiplier leaders who did all 5 of these things, but most of them had kind of a strong suit around 3 or 4 of them, but rarely did someone practice all 5 to kind of an extreme form. And I think we find the same here. In the 25 that I did a really deep analysis of the way that they operate. I live not too far from Mavericks Beach, and there's some massive waves there. And just down the little road a little bit, there are sort of waves about this side. And my son, who is a surfer, and I have a very different approach to these kind of waves. When I see the big wave coming, you can probably guess what I do. I'm like, wow, that's big, that's intimidating. And I turn my back and I head back to shore. And inevitably, I get caught in the wave and tossed and tumbled, and I eat a lot of sand. Now, my son, you probably know what he does when this wave comes. Hazel, you know my son, and you know exactly what he does. He does what any experienced ocean swimmer does, and what any surfer does, is when the wave is big and feels intimidating, instead of moving away from it, they move toward it, and they dive into the wave and through the wave and under the worst of it, and they come out on the other side. And it's because how these impact players interpret ambiguity and uncertainty. They're seeing it with a different lens. Where others see threat, they see opportunity.
So that sort of set the tone, I think, for the work that we didn't really know was coming. But we knew that every one of those everyday challenges were present. However, and one person wasn't going to be able to solve the problem. So Ethan was there at the time, but we talked about, we're all a room full of contributors. Everybody is doing their job. However, are we impact players? You know, can we see the work that needs to be done and take that initiative and do what needs to be done? So we kind of rated ourselves on a continuum of contributor versus impact player. And then we kind of ran out of time and sort of left it. Then fast forward a couple of months later, and Lynn had offered the principalship to Julie and I as a model. And as we sat down to define the work that was to be done, I mean, I'm going to give the credit to Lynn here because this is where it's due. We identified together these five areas: the PBIS systems, the cultivating a professional learning community, the multi-tiered systems of support, the middle school systems and structures, and the positive school culture. We knew those were the areas of greatest need. And we sort of talked it through. Lynn went back to her office, created the visual, and came to the next staff meeting. Talked to the staff, asked them, said that I'm going to be sending you a link. If you're interested in joining one of these teams, please show, within the next couple of weeks, let us know. and, you know, people stepped up, a lot of people stepped up, and they chose their first, second, third choices of which committee they wanted to be on. From those, Lynn again took the initiative, read all the requests, and we built these teams. It was, and I think it related, you know, sort of the video. I wanted to start with the video because it related. This was people stepping up and making a greater impact than just doing well. You know, they said, we're going to do a shared leadership model. And we're in. I mean, we did not need to go out and recruit people.
Julia. So the first time I came, I was not available in December, or so late December, mid-December I joined, and Lynn and Lisa were going through the list of people that had applied, and I looked at the graphic and I said, okay, that makes a lot of sense to me, like I get this. Then we kind of got into it, and what I saw in doing this work was how well this structure was suited to the needs of this school community. So appreciate that prior to COVID, many of these teachers were actually in the Franklin West Supervisory Union. And this is not like my fourth school system that I've worked in, and everybody's in a little bit different place, right? So trying to figure out how to get this group caught up to some of the fantastic work that FNESU had been doing around some of these systems and structures. So they changed supervisory unions, and then they went through COVID, and they had a tremendous staff turnover. So there was just a lot happening for these folks. What reinvigorated some of the work that some of the teachers had been engaged in the Franklin West and then sort of lost their way during COVID and with staff changeover, what we found was the system worked, this structure worked really well to improve communication, gave everybody a stake in the game, like gave the staff the power to make change for their school, where I think changing school districts and having COVID hit left people in that wave where they were just kind of eating sand. And this gave them a chance to go through the wave, see the possibility of moving forward, acknowledging that some of this work had been done in their previous district. And as Lisa said, to make the work light. So we figured out right away the best way to meet. The crossover day for your two halftime rental principals was Wednesday, and so we decided that Wednesdays we would always meet. And so it was every other Wednesday was the full leadership team, which was the chairs of each of those subcommittees. And then the opposite Wednesdays, the subcommittees met. So it would be like leadership team would meet, then subcommittee met, then came back, reported to the leadership team, and we started to see some crossover. It worked. The system really worked. So one of the committees Lisa was chairing was positive school culture.
Positive school culture. So I'll talk a little bit about the work of our committee. And you know, as we go through like each committee and their work briefly, because I know we don't want to take up too much time, that we'll talk about that the work we've done this year is really the foundation for the work that is to come. So we've just sort of set the tone, set the foundation, and then next year I think we'll really be able to get into the meat of the work, or Terry Sue will with the staff. As you can see, we're kind of vested in it because we've you know, it's fun. We've enjoyed it. So the work of our committee, the culture committee, I can't read that so well, so I'm going to read off mine, is we realized early on that positive culture is sort of the foundation of which everything else is built. So we did a couple of full staff meetings, and the committee, the staff meetings were run primarily by Lisa Chaffee, who was like my right-hand woman on the committee. And she was the person that presented, but she talked about what is school, what is culture. And she did a great presentation on like, what is professionalism? And then she sent out a survey on like, why are we here? Why are you doing this job? You know, the big picture stuff. And she's going to take all that work in her next step, and the next steps for next year. She's going to put it on a big bulletin board. She's going to bring all that work back, make it a big visual to start the year with next year. We also did a lot of like just feel good things like staff breakfasts, snacks at staff meetings, We did a weekly shout outs where everybody had the opportunity to thank people for a job well done. And one of the next steps too that I think is going to be important is we talked a lot throughout the year about restorative work. And I know that Lynn's working on that. We'll continue to work on it with Terry Sue, but focus on building working relationships within the school and within the district. Because again, that changing districts, it's, you know, Sheldon still kind of felt like an outsider a little bit. And so we've talked that restorative work, I think, will help to build a more cohesiveness within the district. And that's our work. And then I think I'm going to do the next one, Julie?
Yeah.
Okay, the middle school. The middle school structure. I think this work is really exciting because, you know, we've got Sean Stebbins, who's going to be our dean/assistant principal next year, and he's led this committee throughout the year. And what they've done is they've taken a look at middle school structures. They visited, I think, Richford as well as Enosburg, brought back a lot of ideas to their committee. They're drafting expectations. We've added another planning room coordinator for the middle school. We've added 2 new 6th grade positions, and we're fully staffed on teachers. So I'm very excited about that. And the schedule. The scheduling is like
Really
one
big.
of the most exciting parts, is because Jody Valancourt has worked with Sean and with Sabrina and with Nick McKinney, and they built a schedule that, you know, has so many minutes of science, so many minutes of social studies. They put all the work of the committees have done within a schedule. That's never happened here before. And we're also moving all the classrooms so that all the teams, all the grade levels are going to be connected and side by side. So everybody's moving. We've got a brand new schedule. I mean, lots of things. And our middle school is going to be outside in a yeah.
Modulars.
So, I know. So lots of exciting things going on in the middle school.
So our multi-tiered systems of support committee was led internally by Sarah Farrar, who's a kindergarten teacher, with a lot of help from Jody Valancourt, again, from the supervisory union level. Multi-tiered systems of support built off of work that was done back in 2010, initially called response to instruction or response to intervention. And what it looked at was how well are we using data to determine whether or not a student needs additional support and instruction. That's the fundamental question. And can we head off some of those learning gaps that we see in our data? We'll go ahead and look at the next slide. To maximize instructional time, maximize instructional staff available, and use data to drive instruction so that students are more successful. Now, the MTSS systems, Colorado was the first state that really came out with a good self-assessment where a school could look at, it's an incredibly complex system that looks at professional development and schedule, how are you using your time, instructional staff, so it's all kind of intertwined in these systems. Vermont has, I have to say, a very effective state-level MTSS support team, and they have developed a wonderful self-assessment tool that our committee here in Sheldon worked their way through to decide what are some of the things that we need to do. So they used that field guide, and they did a site visit to Richford to see how Richford had started to implement a more effective MTSS system. And they identified some of the continuing needs that we need to work on to make the system stronger here. How are we meeting as what's called an educational support team, so that when a student begins to fall apart, either academically or behaviorally, although often those things tend to go hand in hand, how can we rally a team around that student, take a holistic look at the child, and determine what resources do we have within our adult community that can provide a coherent and integrated plan to lead that student on a path to success. So what they felt like they really worked on was some really extensive professional reflection. They did an excellent presentation to the whole staff that kind of laid the groundwork. So the staff isn't going to go into next year wondering what MTSS is. Sarah was very frank with them and said, some things are going to have to shift. You cannot be an island unto yourself doing your excellent second grade teaching all by your lonesome. you're going to have to work together with your grade level partner, pool your resources so that students who are striving to make progress, we can pool our resources and work together to help those students be successful. They really pushed hard, and Jody was great. This is where the links started to happen. So Jody was helping with the scheduling committee, but also saw the work from the MTSS. So she was able to carry that thread and build a schedule so that the intervention blocks, the times of day set aside to make sure that there's some targeted instruction at the level a child needs. In this district, they tend to call them WIN times. It stands for what I need. So that those times are consistent for the grade level, and you stagger them so that the people we've hired to provide those interventions are available during WIN time. So they did a lot of progress on that, and they've drafted out the system that can be the foundation for next year. It was a tremendous amount of work. I've led 2 other schools through the MTSS process and taken like 2 years to get this far, so it's really impressive that Sheldon came this far in 1 year. I sat on the professional learning community group, so they had done some really nice work in the Franklin Northwest around professional learning communities, and they knew what they were. But when COVID came in and schedules got twisted and meeting times got fuddled, they lost track of what a PLC is, and they started using that time to decide which kids needed intervention. And so they just, like, the whole thread of what a PLC really is got lost. So what our PLC committee did was regroup. Wait a second, what's the difference between a professional learning community and we'll call it an MTSS committee that's looking at student needs and matching that to the supports available. And really what a professional learning community does is say, Ethan and I were both 3rd grade teachers, we would sit down and look at our data related to a standard we had tried to teach, identifying character, right? And we would talk about how we tried to teach that lesson, and we would look at our the outcomes, and we would say, what could we do differently the next time we teach that? Because less than half our kids got it. So just because we taught it didn't mean they learned it. So as professionals, how could we revamp our instruction and improve our instructional practice? So that's the difference. An MTSS committee really looks at what do the kids need and what do we have available to match that? And a PLC says, what do I need as a professional to improve my practice to better meet the needs of our students? So we held a staff meeting, everybody kind of recalibrated their thinking around that. And what we decided to do, so one of the things to have a PLC, if Ethan and I are gonna be that vulnerable with each other to examine our practice, we have to have some trust and we have to have a relationship to be able to do that hard work. Something that came out in other areas of our data was a really high need for these kids to have better grounding in the basic, what our business leaders are calling the soft skills: cooperation, communication, getting along, sharing, sometimes called social emotional learning in the field. So we researched the professional learning community, informed faculty about it, researched what the district has already purchased, which is a license to the Second Step curriculum, and decided that we would have classroom teachers implement Second Step. That's something everybody's at baseline with. They haven't done it before. And the theory of SEL is that if you implement it well, it will have an impact on academics, because what you're teaching the students is how to be a student, how to be a learner. And so by starting with talking about how we're implementing SEL, we build that trust, we build those relationships in a safer area, and then move into looking at our academic data and begin to discuss how could we improve our reading teaching, our instruction in mathematics, our instruction in science and social studies and writing. So that's the work that the PLC did.
My turn. So I'm on the PBIS school-wide team. PBIS is Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. We have that implemented school-wide, and basically, to boil it down, you're catching kids being good, and you're recognizing that. We came into this with quite a few years of that implementation here at the school. Got away from it a little bit, and we've really returned to it with our BEARS expectations. Belonging, engaged, acting responsibly.
Acting kindly.
Acting kindly. and then responsible, and then safe. So we really, one of the first things we wanted to do as a committee was roll bears back out in a big way. So we did that by reintroducing our monthly school-wide assemblies to recognize each of the qualities. In the past, before my time, I started here last year, before my time, those assemblies would recognize each of those qualities. We decided to take it 1 month at a time, one quality at a time. So next week we'll be getting together to recognize students who demonstrate safety, being safe. They've been a tremendous hit. The kids, one thing they didn't lose during COVID was the ability to be an amazing audience. And they're super receptive, super engaged. The thing we access daily for PBIS is the Bear Paw reward system that we have here. Something's going on, give a student a bear paw, recognize it, they earn rewards within their classroom, we earn school-wide rewards, and that's going pretty well. So areas that we worked on here, we are working with Kim Assam, who's a PBIS coach at the statewide level. She's been fantastic, meeting with us twice a month. She's been really helping Carrie Hatch and I to really assess where we are at as a school. We just did a student survey of students grades 3 through 6 to determine how they feel about their place within the school, how they feel valued, what they feel are the positives within the school, things like that. We have a presentation coming up with the PTO that I'm going to be doing, presenting a brief slideshow about PBIS, because one of the steps we need to get to is having a parent representative on the board. And the trick with that is you can't loophole in a teacher who's also a parent. We want someone who is, you know, aside from having a student at the school, they're not associated with the school. That way we really have a community member. So I'm going to be presenting about that sometime soon. And then we completed the tiered fidelity inventory, which is as interesting and boring as it sounds. But it helped us to assess where we are, what our needs are. The really cool thing was we didn't score that poorly on it, considering all the challenges we faced over the last few years. So we're going into next year at a pretty good spot. So far, over 100 students have been recognized at our Bears assemblies, and it's been so cool to watch students who at the beginning of the year struggled daily now be recognized for amazing behaviors they've learned over the course of the year. There's 5 of us who are going to be attending the BEST Institute. Don't ask me what BEST stands for, I can't remember, but it's
Building Effective Support Teams.
There she is. We're going down to Killington to do that the last 4 days of the last week of June. Hoping to come back with some great stuff from that. And as part of that, we're going to be developing a PBIS handbook for the school that will, one of our big goals is to make sure that one hand knows what the other hand is doing behaviorally. So what's going on in terms of expectations in the elementary school, there are also the expectations in the middle school. There's a different approach, obviously, because you have your age appropriateness to consider. But we really want to have everybody at the same place with what's getting written up for what reason and what makes it a minor behavior or a major behavior, and it's being handled the same way in the elementary section as it is in the middle. And then we're just gathering more information as we go. So that's the work we've been doing on the PBIS subcommittee.
Now I'm going to wrap it up because I know you have a lot of business to attend to tonight, but I want to wrap it up just by saying, we feel like we've made great progress, and you can tell from our presentation that this is not the work of Julie and I. This is the work of people stepping up and not just being ordinary contributors. They're really making an impact. All the teachers that are leading these committees, the supervisory union that's come in to help us, the Kim Assams from the outside. We've tapped resources near and far and resources internally. Support staff have been on these committees also. So I think we've really set a tone of we're in this together. This is shared work, and I think that people are proud of the work too. And this, we actually presented this at a staff meeting last week and said, hey, look at us. We're doing good things.
I
So-
think a big part of it too is the transparency. This isn't a leadership team that's getting together like a little cabal and doing things that people don't know about. Our notes are available to staff to look at and see. The other thing I want to mention too is when I came on board last year as a para and this year as a teacher, and when this school year started, I thought this is the year that we really rebuild here at Sheldon. And I was off the mark with that because the thing I forgot is you can't rebuild without a foundation, and this is the work that's putting that foundation in so that when we come back this summer, this is the year we rebuild.
Yeah.
And I really firmly believe that.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much for sharing it. It is so exciting to hear what all those outcomes are, where we are now with each of those teams, and can't thank all of you enough for helping to lead those improvement teams.
Yeah.
Couldn't have done it without you, Lynn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the structure
Yeah.
worked really well. So just one other example. So when my little PLC committee said, let's implement second step, like K to 8, we logged in, we checked it out, and then I went to Sean, who was leading the middle school committee, and I said, can you vet that with your middle school committee? Because we don't want to impose that on the middle school. So the committees, through the leadership structure, were able to see where there were crossovers and impacts of one group on another group and keep the communication flowing. So good structure.
It's fantastic.
I just also want to chime in and thank you all. I had the pleasure of attending the last little meeting, whole school meeting last week, and I've been to these for, a long time now, 10 plus years. I have a 15-year-old who went here. So the energy was so different than I have ever seen before. Even Sheldon a long time ago, the energy was good. The number of kids who were there and well-behaved and happy. Staff looked happy. So just the energy was incredible, and I want to thank you all and thank the board and the administration for really stepping up and saying, hey, we know Sheldon needs help, and for everybody kind of rallying, because this means a lot to us and our kids. So thank you. Thank you all.
I'm also happy to say that Lisa and Julie will be staying connected to Sheldon as we move forward into next year.
Yeah, we want to keep our little fingers.
We're pretty
crossed.
vested. Poor Terry Sue.
So us retired people don't like to stay for full board meetings, so I'm going to say goodnight.
Even us unretired people.
Thank you so much for coming. It was
Thank you all.
Thank you so much,
You're very
and
welcome.
have a great summer.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, that brings us to Morgan with our financial update.
I don't have a lot for you tonight. We are still waiting on the allowable tuition report. Hoping at my meeting on Friday we'll get some indication that it's actually going to come in time this year. As I said in my report, I do anticipate that you will be receiving a pretty sizable bill from Enosburg-Richford District. I don't have an indication about Maple Run, which is your other big district that sends you tuition kids, whether they will be owing you money or you will be owing them money for the true up for 2022. You do have the ability to pay that bill in this fiscal year or next fiscal year, even if it drops this fiscal year. So in terms of where we're going to end up with a budget, it's not a concern, but it would be nice to get it off the desk. Before I go to the motion, if you had a chance to walk around back where the modular building is going, the site work has been done. The concrete forms, I'm told, may start being installed as early as Friday, and then they're hoping to get that poured and cured before the end of the school year. The modular is being built at the factory, I believe in Maine, and once we have a place to put it, we'll start pressing them a little harder on getting a delivery date. And then the one motion that I'm looking for tonight is around the tax anticipation note. So this is the loan that we get on the books for July 1, and we will access it if The money that we're expecting that comes in from the towns or from the state comes in late because our payroll starts up right away on July 1, and we don't tend to see any significant inflow of money until September. The last couple of years, one of the other towns in your sister district has not lodged its grand list in time, and that's caused that state payment to be delayed by a few months. And so we're doing that as a hedge against that. We have in recent past drawn down on it. We did not have to touch it last school year, but we're still going to get it put in place. The other wrinkle that we'll talk about later under Lynn's update is the state doesn't have a passed budget yet, and we don't really know what that's going to mean if on July 1 they're still in that position in terms of how quickly we'll get money from them. So the motion, if you're so willing, is to approve and authorize the chair to sign on the board's behalf the tax revenue anticipation note and related documents, including the borrowing resolution and tax certificate for a straight line of credit not to exceed $1.5 million with Community Bank NA due June 28th, 2024. And that's, once the motion is passed, I'll get the documents from the bank and you'll be able to sign it away from the table.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Kat. We'll do that by roll. John?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
Kat?
Aye.
Mary's an aye.
Thank you. And unless you have any questions, that's all I've got for you tonight.
Great, thanks, Morgan. Okay, so that brings us to your report, Lynn.
Okay. So I'm going to start out with personnel. I am quite sure it is different than what you received in your board notes because we're still actively in the hiring season, and I looked at it tonight, and I'm not sure it's completely accurate at this point. Things are just moving so quickly, it's hard to keep up. So there are some action items under hiring. So Lorelei Westbrook in Bakersfield as an academic interventionist, and Ashley Tugas as a grade 2 teacher. Alexandra, the what? I don't know how to say that name. It's there for you, the grade 5 teacher in Sheldon. The rest are support staff positions or SU positions, and they're there as information. So I would ask for a motion to approve those 3 hires.
I'll make that motion on hiring by roll. Kat?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Miranda? Aye. And Mary is an aye.
You'll notice in the rest of the personnel update that there are some transitions with the resignations there. So several of our support staff members are moving into professional roles. This is part of our grow your own strategy. So we have some people that are moving into special educator roles and into classroom teacher roles. So we're excited to welcome them aboard. We still have, we have a couple of schools that are fully staffed with classroom teachers. We still have some other teacher openings and support staff openings in Bakersfield. I think we're fully staffed. We were looking for paraeducators.
Still looking for paraeducators.
Yes. In Berkshire, they still have elementary classroom teachers, a literacy interventionist position, and paraeducators. In Montgomery, you have a 1-year kindergarten position and paraeducators.
One paraeducator.
One paraeducator. In Sheldon, as they stated, they're fully staffed with their classroom teachers, which is it's a great place for them to be, given where we were even into the fall last year. So we're still looking for a PE teacher, a school counselor, a literacy teacher leader, a technology support specialist, a head custodian, and paraeducators. I will say I've seen progress on 3 of those come across my desk this week, so I'm hopeful they're going to be in a much better place this time next week. We have not yet been able to find that NMV health teacher that we had put into the budget to share across the NMV schools. So we'll continue to look for that. I do have one personnel request, and that is a personnel request from Mr. Badeau requesting compensation for unused accrued vacation time as he's transitioning out of Berkshire and out of FNESU. So I don't know if you want to take that up now, if you want to move it to the end.
I would say it would be best to move that to the end in an executive session.
All right, and next is student. I don't have anything under student except some really cute pictures that Courtney, she always appreciates building this slideshow. NMVU principals do a really fabulous job of getting your events posted online, so I could hear her excited about the pictures she was finding as she was building this earlier.
It was right in the middle. I was like, hold your paper down. He was like holding up to his eyes.
Oh, I see him.
Yeah, the big giant one in the middle.
So next up, I want to talk about summer hiring, and there's something that I added in here today that came into my mind just before this meeting. The first is I ask you this every June. I'm going to ask you to grant me the authority to hire outside of board approval over the summer as we fill those positions. And then the second one, do you want me to say the second one now, or do you want to act on the first?
Well, why don't we make, since the other one doesn't require a motion, eh?
I think you should make a motion, actually.
Let's still do them separately.
Okay.
So I'll make the motion for Lynn to have the authority to hire over the summer away from the board. By roll, Kat.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Emily.
Aye.
Miranda.
Aye.
Mary's an aye.
This request came to me, we've got several people, as you know, from the last couple of board meetings who are out of leave time. And I have the authority to approve it when it is a support staff member, but they have to come to the board if they're a professional educator. So I'm wondering, with the remaining days we have left, if the board would grant me the authority to approve any unpaid sick leave that is required from a staff member if they're out and their daycare closes or they get sick or something happens, rather than having to call the board back to act on those final requests.
Yeah, I'll make that motion. That makes sense. By roll, Kat.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Emily.
Aye.
Miranda.
Aye.
Mary is an aye.
So the legislative update that we have, Morgan and I are gonna tag team this a little bit. It's a little confusing because I don't have a legislative summary to share with you yet. The organizations that put together legislative summary that VSBA, VSA, and VPA all push out to their membership have decided, because the budget was vetoed and that there's an upcoming veto session, that they will put that final summary together after that veto session. So what I do know is several of the bills that we were watching didn't move in this legislative session, things that I had brought to you around. I think there's still something standing out there around PCV delays. There's also the stuff, nothing really moved on private independent schools and having the same accountability measures that public schools have. And I'm sure there are several other.
Universal meals.
Was that?
The universal meals.
That passed.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Maureen, I'm going to ask to talk just a little bit about the veto piece and some of the questions we have that we don't yet know the answer to.
So for folks who don't know, the governor vetoed the budget. There's a group, I think, of about 25 legislators who the Democrats normally would count on to override a veto, who said that they're going to uphold the veto because of the changes in the motel housing program for the homeless. And so when I looked today, it did not appear that a veto session had been scheduled yet. So I think what's most likely going on in the background is that the Speaker of the House is trying to figure out if they can wrangle the votes that they need to override the veto. If not, they're going to have to put some next steps, which would be passing another budget, which would have to go through the House and the Senate again. The big concern for me with that is that if a budget is not passed by June 30th, we don't know what that means for operation of the Agency of Education on July 1st. They wouldn't have a budget, so I don't know if they would be furloughed the way that we've seen at the federal level in the past. If some of them would be considered essential and be allowed to work, if they're given a percentage of their budget that they're allowed to work through the way that schools are. And so that I think is the big unknown, more so than the other pieces of legislation that are in that bill that we care about. Like there is some money for funding PCBs, not enough, but it's a piece in there. There's, I believe, the yield figure, which sets the tax rate, is in there. All that stuff does not appear to be controversial, so that will pass in some measure. It's just more of a question of when.
So I'd ask if you had any questions, but I'm not sure that I could answer them because there's so much uncertainty with where we are. So you could try if you did have questions. Okay. So just talk briefly about year end. It is in warp speed. Once you get to this part of the year, there's a little panic mode that kind of happens as you hit June. The amount of work that is happening in the schools with year-end preparations and hiring and wrapping all of the pieces up, and here in Sheldon in particular, getting ready to make some classroom moves and things like that. There's quite a bit of work to be done. So we're hoping for a soft landing at the end of this school year as we shift into summer mode and preparing for next year. And for us at our office, it's strange time of the year because we're wrapping up year end, and at the same time we shift right into the last week of June, next year's work with our leaders. So we started shifting into that today at our leadership team meeting. So lots of really fun events happening across the SU in the last several weeks. There've been tomorrow night we're heading to Bakersfield to watch Willy Wonka, and their district music festival was just in Enosburg. We've got a semifinal game that was just happening in Richford tonight. We've had several playoff games that happened last week in other parts of the SU, and just some really fun, engaging things that are happening for students and families. And I think that many of our schools, their presence on social media has improved. I've gotten feedback from families about how much better they feel about being able to see what's happening, and that more regular presence has really been helpful. So we'll try to keep that up as we move into next year. So I'm going to give you, Mary and I talked at our pre-meeting about a little preview about what's to come next year. So in next year, there's a lot of work happening over the summer, a lot of professional learning opportunities for teachers. If you could shift forward one slide, Courtney. There's a link at the very top that says Summer Professional Learning. That link is connected. If you could click us in there, it's connected to all the learning that's happening within FNESU. Any chance you can make that a little bigger? So I'm going to just tell you what the headings are for some of the professional learning offerings. And before I do, I just want to remind you of our board goals being around proficiency around literacy by the end of grade 3, the social emotional learning piece, and the portrait of a learner, student-centered learner goal. So you'll see some connections to that board work in the mission vision piece. So Teachers College Reading and Writing Project, that is a powerful literacy institute that's going to be offered this summer for our teachers. I'm going to look at my own court because I just can't quite read that.
I know.
We also have a team that's going to be working on building more equitable advisory systems across FNESU. Social emotional learning work group that's going to be doing some work this year. I can give you access to this so that you can see the descriptions as well, but I won't read all of that to you. We have an invitation out to all of our teachers to do the work with the Sweethearts and Heroes. There are a couple of people, he owns Twigs, and I can't remember his first name, but he does really fabulous work coming into schools, and The magic of circles is something he's doing with educators, and this is an opportunity that we're able to offer because of a sponsorship through Champlain Chevrolet. So we're really appreciative to be able to have this to offer. Tom Murphy, yes, to offer to our students or our teachers. The district equity improvement plan development. There's a team that's going to be working on looking at all of the data that we have gathered through both the education, the hidden curriculum audit that we've been doing in each of the schools, and the equity audit that we've done, and identify some themes and areas of growth. We did a little bit of that work looking at some of the data today with FNESU leaders, and we're able to identify some areas. It's similar to what the board did previously at the retreat, to really try to identify some areas that we need to lean into. The Fountas and Pinnell word study is going to be happening for our 4th through 6th grade teachers. Mind Play comprehensive reading course for educators. This is for all special educators, instructional coaches, and literacy teachers. And the OGAP additive reasoning course, that's targeted towards our K through 2 teachers, and this is where we have been working K through 2, focus on literacy, and this year we're shifting to math with K through 2, and the 3 through 5 teachers are shifting from math to literacy. There's a book study happening, Building Thinking Classrooms in Mathematics, and so you can see that there are a lot of offerings for our educators in FNESU over the summer, many more than we've ever really offered before. So I'll give you a little preview of the work that our leaders are going to be doing this summer at the Summer Leadership Institute. Really focusing there on leadership development. We'll be doing work around instructional leadership, supervision and evaluation, having hard conversations, and skill development around that. We'll be working as part of one of the requirements of Act 173 to develop a needs-based professional learning plan. We're going to be co-designing that and thinking through what that will look like over the course of the next school year. We'll be focused on thinking through and planning around student-centered learning opportunities in FNESU. And we are, this is a really great segue based on what the Sheldon team just presented tonight. We're going to have a system improvement team at the FNESU leadership level that will involve our leaders, and it will also involve some other stakeholders that will be invited to join as well. Similar model to what we set up here in Sheldon. And there'll be four teams, and they'll be focused on academic proficiency, social emotional learning proficiency, our work around our portrait of a learner, and student-centered learning. So you can see that those are really clearly tied to the overarching board goals. And then the fourth is going to be focused on staff recruitment and retention. So those teams will be, really looking at what the charge is of the work this summer at Institute, and they'll be planning forward for that work that they'll be coming back to each month next year.
Does enrichment fit into any of those 4 bullets you just
It should
identified?
it should fit in all, the top 3.
Okay.
System improvement teams for 23-24. There's other work that's happening, really being modeled off what we created here in Sheldon. So I'm really excited to share that all of your NMV schools will have system improvement teams as we transition into next year, all at varying stages. So we had Sheldon that went first. Bakersfield is a little further. They're getting there in terms of assigning their teams and getting started. We've begun the work in Berkshire, and Sandy and I are just beginning the work to prepare for that transition in Montgomery next year. We'll also have system improvement teams at Enosburg High School, and as I said, in FNESU, and each will be unique because it's really based on what is the need within the building and where's the best place for us to focus our efforts based on that school's individual needs. Any questions about any of that?
Lynn, I just had a question about what does the summer food program look like this year?
I don't think it is, Morgan, you might have to help me with this. I don't think it's any different than what it has looked like in previous years. We're still going to have kids coming in and accessing free meals when they come for our summer program. And I don't know how many of the sites that are open to kids 18 and under. I have not gotten that part of the information yet. So I can get that information to you, Kat. Is that specifically what you're asking about, like the open
Yeah,
sites?
and more also to just kind of get it out there too, you know, for anyone that listens to this or watches this. You know, because I know in the past, you know, I know what my town does, but then I thought there was some towns, maybe Bakersfield, that didn't have a site, but that they can pick up in Enosburg. So yeah, I just wondered what that looked like, and it's always good to just remind people, you know, what's available in the summer.
So would it be sufficient, I just put it in my designee sheet to have Dawn send something out and we post it on Facebook that answers that question, Kat, around what the summer feeding sites are and dates? Okay.
And it might be
Yeah,
nice to
sounds
put
good.
it in final newsletters also, so parents who may not have internet access or at home, but get the newsletter. Do you all still, Sandy, do you still hand out the paper newsletters on Fridays or
We
no?
don't hand out a paper one.
I'm so old school. I have kids,
So-
my kids
some-
have been out of
some
school for a little
places do.
while.
They go via email to everyone, and
Oh.
everyone has internet access.
Okay, all right. Well, so the new, at least putting it in the newsletter that
Yes.
people are getting what the summer feeding looks like.
We post a lot on Facebook as well.
Okay, great.
Okay, and the last thing I'm gonna just show you is a space plan. You're gonna have to make that quite a bit bigger if you could, Courtney. I'm gonna talk you through wings. So you're not gonna be able to see all the details. I will send you this slideshow so that you can look at the, you know, minute details about each of these spaces. It's fine. So if you look on the left side of your screen, you see that there are 4 classrooms over there. We made some shifts and they already previewed that for you, so every grade level will be next door to their partner teacher. And Sheldon has these really neat classrooms where the back of each of their instructional spaces actually has an open little walkway in a storage area connecting the 2 classrooms. So as you walk into that primary wing, you'll have KK 1-1, and then across the hall will be 2-2-3-3. So we're making just a couple shifts over there to put people right next door to their partners. We've got a little bit of added, something we noticed in our walkthroughs, down there between those grade 1 classrooms, there's a door that had been added years ago. So we'll be taking that little door out. Our pre-K spaces will stay right where they are, and that's at the very bottom of your screen. On the bottom right, you could tell that I did not go into graphic design or architecture because this is my rough drawing and totally not to scale or even straight. That's the modular classroom space, which is really kind of behind me out. We can walk that way when we leave if you would like. It'll still be light. So in that modular classroom space, 3 of the 7th and 8th grade groups will be out there. So you'll have ELA, social studies, and math. We did not choose to put science out there because we are not running water to that modular space. So that 4th classroom space will be used for interventions. So we can divide that room. They're gonna be pretty substantial sized classrooms. So we'll be able to do a 6 through 8 literacy intervention space, a 6 through 8 math intervention space, an extra special ed intervention space, and a flexible use space. There'll be an enclosed walkway into the building, and currently where the music room is, Courtney, if you can go down right there, that now is gonna be the 7th and 8th grade science room. So that middle school group, that 7th and 8th grade, is going to be all together there. Now if you walk us down with that little pink dot on the right-hand side, you'll see that bank of 8 classrooms there. There are a few shifts there where science will now be music, and you see the little blue squiggly lines. We're putting in some sound wafers to create some buffers for the classrooms that'll be next door. The same theory about being next to your partner teachers is in play here, but it doesn't completely work, so it'll be grade 4 side by side. Grade 5s will be across the hall, and 6th grades will be side by side. We've also done some really strategic moving around of intervention spaces. So that pre-K through 2 math and literacy intervention is right by the pre-K through 2 or pre-K through 3 wing. And so as they started talking about their interventions and their schedules, they have teacher teams. So it'll be for intervention and for special education. It'll be pre-K through 2, 3 through 5, and 6 through 8. So the 3 through 5 math and literacy interventions are in these 2 small spaces that are attached to art and music, but they're right there where those kids are. It makes perfect sense for it to be, that's where their support is. We also are putting the 5 through 8 school counselor at the very beginning of that hall in the room right next to the grade 4, which again, I think makes sense in terms of having that person available to those students. There is a lot going on that you'll have to look at when I send this to you, where the blue is in the very middle. So that is really we created an additional instructional space this past year for the 3rd grade. And we're taking that space and taking down a little bit of one wall where the existing safe space is here now. And so that will turn into 2 planning group spaces. So on the side that's closest to that pre-K through 3 area will be a pre-K through 4 planning room, or a K through 4 planning room. And then on the side that's closest to where the 7th and 8th grade is, that will be a 5 through 8 planning room.
Is that Deb's dream? Was that, remember?
It's very close.
Okay, gotcha.
Very close. She's happy with it.
Awesome.
We've accounted for in some of these smaller spaces, some great feedback from the staff. They helped me to see some of the things that I couldn't see when I was laying this out. And so my second round, the final round of this, I think it's solid. So we have good space for speech and language, school psychologists, our OT, our PT, and special educators have adequate space now. So one change we made in the very front of the building is we have that large space that this year has been a lot of different things. Right now it's a special ed office. It began by being the assistant principal's space. And the principal has been in that space where the window is right as you come in. That's where Sean's going to be. The assistant principal will be in the smaller space. The principal will be right behind that in the larger space. And the thinking behind that is we were not able to have a separate conference room in this plan because we really wanted instructional spaces. So the principal's office will double as the conference room space as well. So any questions on the space plan?
I think it looks great. I think it's gonna accommodate the number of kiddos, the number of staff, and all of the needs, because we're bursting at the seams, so that's amazing. One question I had was about the new preschool room that was like created, and it's behind what's the existing music room now. I've heard a lot of chatter from parents and a couple of staff about the air. There's no...
It's being fixed.
Oh, thank God in heaven.
It couldn't be fixed while we were in session.
Oh, that makes sense.
So
Okay.
it's on the list and Vern's
Okay.
aware, and it's
Oh,
gonna
thank
be
goodness.
fixed.
I went in just to verify, because, we all like fresh air, but okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And we're also gonna while you see a blue squiggly between the pre-K space and the 7-8 science, and I just have a little note there that says we'll monitor, meaning if there's an issue with the sound between those 2 spaces.
Gotcha.
I've gotta think it's gonna be better than having music in there,
Oh,
which
yeah.
they have this
Oh,
year.
yes.
We'll monitor for whether or not we need to put sound wafers in there
Okay.
as well, so.
This is
But the
amazing.
pre-K kids are so good, they don't notice music. They're responsible for it.
I think I'm pretty pleased with how this
amazing.
got laid out,
Yeah.
and I think that the staff, I received really positive feedback. The feedback that was really constructive. Other feedback, nothing was negative. It was all constructive, and the constructive feedback made this final plan even better. So I think we're in a good place, and that's all I have for you.
Great. Thanks, Lynn.
You're welcome.
So we're up with our principal reports. Rhoda, do you have anything that you'd like to highlight or add to yours?
Yeah, just a couple of little things. So there's pictures at the bottom of mine that kind of talk about some of the things that were above, or show some of the things that were above. Little chickens, and you see Leslie Rainville in her bee suit, and those kinds of things. But one of the pictures, and Courtney actually had it on one of Lynn's slides, I did not talk about in my report. It's actually a group of kids with little aprons and chef hats on. So this was a group of kids who volunteered to help in our kitchen. And it's a pretty big size group of kids who volunteered throughout the year in the kitchen and helped out as a school job. And Tammy, our head cook, along with our guidance counselor, made these aprons and chef hats for each one of them. And so we took a picture of them, which was really neat to see. And they had a great time helping out as well. The other thing I wanted to highlight real quick is that the SIT teams, as Lynn mentioned, we've been working on that. We had a teaming structure already in place at Bakersfield, but there were some things that just didn't always quite work about it, and the communication wasn't always great. And so this idea of these SIT teams, I think, will make that teaming structure much better. And I have sent out the surveys. I have all those results back. I'm going to lay out who is on what teams on Monday to my staff, so we're going to be hitting the ground running when we start with those teams as well. And every single staff member is on a team, as well as just about every single para is on a team. So we have 5 teams that'll be running, and in my little school, it means everybody's doing the work.
That's great.
And we also did an update of our assets and needs assessment with Sterling Collaborative this year because we had so many new staff members. And that assets and needs assessment came back really positive. And the pieces that came out of it for recommendations are going to fit very nicely into those teams. So I'm excited about that work.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Lenny?
I think I'd like to talk a little bit more about the Friday Fun Day initiative that we're working on at the middle school. So this, I think I've talked about it previously. We were partnering with Ms. Coda helped set us up. I haven't used that one in a little while. I usually say Superintendent Lynn Coda. Lynn set us up with the FNUSU BCBA Tim Stanley to help facilitate some planning and implementation of a Friday Fun Day model, which has been worked to some success at Sheldon. I don't know if any other schools are doing something like that.
Enosburg Middle School.
And you guys are doing it too. So the intention was finding ways that we could increase student engagement and concurrently with that decrease some student behaviors. And when we set this up, we knew that there's an element around depending on the amount of work that you can get completed, but not from just a pure compliance perspective, but if you're fully engaged in being a successful member of the classroom community, you'll have completed X, Y, and Z amount of work. And if you don't, you end up in what they call like the red room or the yellow room. Red room meaning like you really probably need to be in this space for the remainder of the Friday Fun Day activity. And then there's a yellow room where they can work through the missing work they have to then join the green room. And the green room or green activities are very fun, student-centered, community building, but not like kumbaya community building, but activities that are really engaging and age appropriate that get kids to engage with successfully their peers in a fun, awesome way. And what we were hoping to see and expecting to see was that increase in engagement, decrease in behaviors, and we've seen both of those starting to have some serious effects, especially after that first Friday when students saw like, there was kind of a natural consequence and I missed out on this highly preferred thing. And we have started seeing students saying things on their own like, oh man, I really got to get this done, or oh man, I got to use win time to go check in with this person to get this work done, or oh man, I kind of like slacked off today in this class and I'm really worried about falling behind. And some kids have even actively started to build some executive functioning skills around monitoring their progress and also advocating for support. And we've been kind of trying some different levels of differentiation for some friends who are coming to certain staff members that they are trusted and saying like, I'm really overwhelmed, I'm worried about how far I'm falling behind, I'm starting to feel like I don't even want to try. And that's a great thing to hear from them because that's at least they do care about their success and they have somebody that they trust will support them. We've put in some extra plans to help those friends be successful, and we've seen the volume of students that are accessing the red and the yellow room go down. We've also seen the volume of students needing to access our different levels of our behavioral support go down as well. So it's been super awesome, and I'm hoping that's something we continue to refine and carry into next year.
Thank you so much, Lenny. Sandy?
Something that I didn't mention on my report that I've been working on is extending the school day at Montgomery. We've had the shortest school day of all the schools in NMV, and traditionally it went back when one of our bus drivers had to drive up West Hill to pick up high school kids and bring them down, and that kind of went away last year because it wasn't equitable. The other students on other roads weren't getting rides down, so once that tie to the high school bus went away, we were able to start restructuring. So I've met with bus drivers and we're redoing the routes, we're changing the times, we're starting earlier, we're not doing 2 loads, and we're gonna be able to hopefully get kids to school at 7:45 and get them into the classrooms at 8:05 like the other schools are doing. So pretty excited about that. It's a lot of hours.
That's 30 minutes a day.
It's a lot of hours of academic time that our kids have not had for all these years, so, yes. I presented it to the staff the other day, so it's out there.
It's great.
Will the day still go until 3, or is
Yes.
it an earlier?
Nope, we extended
Because I
it.
thought the other schools that started earlier got out earlier.
Nope,
No, we
Nope.
go to 3.
3 o'clock. Did the
There's
homework,
one school that goes, that ends a little earlier, Enosburg Elementary.
but I only compared NMV
Right,
schools.
yeah.
So,
Thank you, Sandy. That's great. Okay. Sorry, bear with me. I'm scrolling through 44 pages up to the top. There should be an automatic button that sends you there, but there isn't. Okay, so, great. That brings us just to our board business. I don't have any future agenda items for the August meeting, but does anyone at this moment? Certainly there's plenty of time between now and August 2nd, and we'll be at Berkshire.
I don't have any agenda items. I just have a random question for Lynn regarding like air quality as far as the wildfires go. Like I noticed that there was a warning on our local weather earlier in the week, you know, advising people who are compromised especially not to spend prolonged periods outside. And then I happened to see in the news that there was actually some schools, I think maybe like mid-state New York, but they were so affected that they ended up like canceling after school sports and things like that. So I just wondered, I mean, I feel like this is kind of a newer thing, but has that been brought up at all? You know, like is there guidance, anything like within the, like AOE even, like for that sort of thing as we move forward and might be seeing this more, like how that will impact our schools and our kids?
There has been no guidance that I have seen around that. It is kind of rare. I mean, my watch was going off yesterday saying the air quality is bad, and I'm certainly feeling the air quality impact, but I don't know if we'll receive anything from the agency. Certainly if our school nurses were starting to see issues, I am confident that they would bring something to me and we would have conversations about whether or not we're going to make changes to what we do with students throughout the day. And so far I haven't seen anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, and I know we're gonna do an executive session, so just before we dismiss everyone and enter executive, I did want to just put out to the board that Michelle Irish reached out to me about this summer's district equity improvement plan development work. And she just wanted to see if there's anyone on the board who might be interested in participating. And I will forward this email to everyone so you could see the dates and the details. And if it aligns with your summer schedule, which I know is tough when summers are busy, you can reach out to Michelle if you're interested in involvement on that in that group. It's going to be about a 20-hour time commitment. So just I'll go ahead tomorrow or the end of the day today and forward it to folks.
So I actually just sent it to you because it is I sent you my slideshow, and if you go onto that summer work preview, that link that I brought you into, that's all laid out in the link.
So the dates upcoming this summer are July 26th to the 28th, and then August 15th. And then probably what you just emailed kind of gives people the details.
Yes.
Okay. So reach out to Michelle Irish if that is of interest.
Before we adjourn, could I say something?
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to take an opportunity to thank Lenny. This is his last NMV board meeting. You've been here for 6 years, working hard for Berkshire, for the students and the community, and I know it's been great to have you be an NMV partner with I heard that clearly from your colleagues today at the leadership team meeting. So I want to thank you for your efforts, and I want to wish you the best as you move forward.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And like I said earlier today, it's a little bit hard on both sides because I have an unhealthy demand of myself, and even though I feel like ultimately this is the correct choice for me and my family, it feels a lot like quitting, and it feels a lot like being another adult leaving some of these kids who have had other adults leave them, and that hurts pretty greatly. But I do know at the end of the day that I'm going to give space for somebody else to meet the standard for what our kids need, and I felt like between my work-life balance, I couldn't meet the standard that I want to provide to each of those different pieces. I think it was the right thing to give someone else a chance to carry it.
Thank you, Lenny.
Thanks, Lenny.
Thank you so much, Lenny. We will miss you. Wish you all the best. So I will make a motion to enter executive session, 7:58. We'll do that by roll. Kat?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
And Mary is an aye. And thank you to everyone else, and have a really lovely and safe, fun summer. We'll see you in August.